This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm Brandon Thurston, broadcasting on demand from Buffalo, New York, where today is Sunday, June 27th, 2021. Today on the program, ticket sales for WWE at least don't look so bad after all. We have yet another update on ticket sales as the return to touring is only a week away. More on AEW's investment into gaming. WWE did its third sweep of talent releases just a few days ago. Wrestling Twitter is dead. Long live Wrestling TikTok. More on that, on the presence or lack thereof of various wrestling brands on TikTok. A deep dive into cage match results data, and former WWE co-presidents George Barrios and Michelle Wilson appear poised to enter the bowling business. All that and more today, but first. And now, joining us from my South by Southeast, from South Buffalo, ring announcer, entertainer, co-host of Wrestlenomics Radio, Chris Gullo joins us to talk about the week's events.
Yeah, not another slow week for sure. I mean, last week was really busy, so maybe not as busy as that week, but not a slow week when it comes to the wrestling business side of things. And let's get right into it, Brandon. I want to talk about viewership here. We'll start with last week's SmackDown on June 18th and then talk about the overnight that we have as well. For June 18th SmackDown, a little over 2 million with a 0.54 in the 18 to 49. You compare that to the week before, they were a little under 2 million and with a 0.48 in the 18 to 49. So nice improvement. Now that would have been the Hell in a Cell episode where Rey Mysterio went one-on-one with Roman Reigns. And just for an overnight rating of the SmackDown that aired on Friday with the return of Edge, 1.86 million viewers for the overnight with a 0.5 rating in the 18 to 49. The previous week, the final was up 6% from the overnight. So if the same is true, the final total viewership would be 1.97 million. So a tiny bit of a drop for SmackDown, but still, you know, June looked to be fairly better than May was.
Yeah, the overnight looks like it's going to be a slightly. These are minute differences to me that we're talking about. The total viewership for the Hell in a Cell episode is up 5% from the previous week, up 12% in 1849. So the 1849 is a decent jump. Total audience, very small jump. On our notebook that we will give to patrons, I have the vroom vroom gauges here where I take the what do? I take the median of the three deltas of the difference of the last 4 weeks. This week versus the difference of the last 4 weeks. In total audience, 1849 and 18 to 34. And I take the median of those three deltas. Meaning of those three deltas is up 8%. So a good rating, a slightly good rating for SmackDown. To put the Hell in a Cell for free on TV. To hang the cage for another day. Someone mentioned to me that it must have been really, it was really expensive to construct the cage again. But they were, think about it this way, they were not taking it down. I'm sure they left it up for Saturday and through Sunday for the pay-per-view. So it's probably not a huge, if any, added expense. They just put the cage up a couple days early. In fact, they left it up on Monday as well, and for Hell in a Cell all over the place in the course of 4 days. Because there was, an Xavier and Bobby Lashley Hell in a Cell match on Raw.
I wonder if NBC Universal was like, can we have a Hell in a Cell on linear television as well, since you're giving one to Fox?
Yeah, that's possible. Who knows?
And that was the last pay-per-view, and the Thunderdome went out. Well, WWE at least main roster. Not in front of people, so it should be interesting.
Yes.
Money in the Bank
until the next pandemic.
Yeah, until the next pandemic. Yeah. we'll we already kind of talked about Raw there. What's the June 21st Raw that included that Hell in the Cell match? A little over 1.7 million with a 0.49 and 18 to 49. If you compare it to the week before, a nice little uptick, which would, I'm sorry, compared to 4 weeks before. I know we do Raw in a 4-week period. The Raw in last week of May was 1.56 with a 0.44 and 18 to 49. So much like SmackDown, it looks to be a little increase, from May to June as the months wrap up here. And in your meter, a 0.05 with the median of the 18 to 34 and 18 to 49. Audience.
The Wrestlenomics meter, a proprietary metric.
So, good news for Raw, for the month of June. We'll see if that continues in July as the weather gets nicer, but fans will also be going to the show. So that should be interesting as well, too. Keep it with WWE. NXT last week, did 665,000 overall viewers with a 0.171849. That was the debut of Diamond Mine. That was the big thing of the episode. Compared to the week before, 700,000 with a 0.19 in 18 to 49. So a little bit of slip in both categories there for NXT.
This was the lowest. This was the lowest yet on a Tuesday. It was only slightly down from what I think a couple weeks ago they did a number that was slightly higher. That was the lowest, but this is now the lowest on Tuesday, unopposed by AEW. So we're really getting an idea of where NXT lives here on a Tuesday. It's somewhere in the range of the high 600,000s or the low 700,000s. Not that much different from what they were doing on Wednesday when they were opposed by AEW. I don't know what external factors to chalk that up to, other than it's not as if it's not as if the product was so popular that there are all these people itching to watch it if it was only on another night.
I
wonder what NBCU thinks.
I tuned in, and I don't normally tune in every Tuesday. I was intrigued by the Diamond Mine, and I was pretty excited to see Hideki Suzuki. I had no idea he had a performer contract. I literally thought he was just a coach. So I was pretty pumped to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. Critically speaking, I've heard good things about it, and I sort of half paid attention to it this week, and I've heard good things from people whose opinions I think are smart about the last 2 weeks.
It was a good show. I will say that. Even though a couple of people featured are no longer with the company, but that's a whole nother story we'll get into a little bit later. This is the AEW Dynamite result from June 18th. They had a Saturday night Dynamite, which was a day before we're recording this, so I don't think we have an overnight yet on that. But for the June 18th Dynamite, they did 551,000. That was the last of the Friday night Dynamites with 0.20 and 18 to 49, compared to the week before, which did 490,000 with a 0.19. So a little bit of a uptick overall audience and for 18 to 49. But I'm sure they're happy to get out of Friday night for a while, but yet that's where Rampage is going to live. So it's interesting to I don't know how, like I said, I don't know how happy they are about how they did on Friday night. To me, you're putting your flagship show on at 10 o'clock on a night where people are really out doing things, especially people are now out to do things. I'm sure they're happy to be back on Wednesdays.
Yes. I'm interested to see how the viewership holds up this coming Wednesday. As you said, now that they're back on Wednesday on TNT at 8 o'clock. Is there any... it's one thing to be preempted for 1 week or a couple weeks. Raw has been preempted various times. Well, Raw has been preempted years ago. It's only been preempted once in the last 15 years or so. That was in 2008. I found out earlier this week. But it's one thing to be preempted once or twice. It's another thing to be preempted 4 consecutive weeks. Does that cause anybody to break up their routine, any significant number of viewers to break up their routine and to not pick back up watching AEW on Wednesday? The gospel would tell you that wrestling fans are creatures of habit, and they'll, if they want to watch wrestling, they'll find a way. So maybe they won't. Maybe there won't be a problem for AEW. But I would say what's an over-under for next week on whether or not did these preemptions disrupt any habitual viewing? 800,000 or so, something like that. Another question I'm interested to see the results on Tuesday when the Saturday finals come out for cable. We wouldn't get an overnight for AEW because it's on cable. We only get these overnights for network programming. That's why we always have it for SmackDown. Does a Saturday night at 8 do better than a Friday night at 10? I think Friday night's a slightly better night than Saturday, but 8 is a way better time slot than 10. I did a poll on the Wrestlenomics Twitter, and the vast majority of people thought that the Saturday was going to do better. Notably, there was on FS1, also from 8 to 10, running head-to-head, a replay of WWE SmackDown from the previous night. Now, I looked into this. It is not out of the norm for SmackDown replays to be airing on FS1 and FS2. They do so on an irregular basis. There doesn't seem to be a consistent time slot. But they're usually on in the wee hours of the morning, 3 a.m., 1 a.m., something like that. Sometimes they are in prime time, but when they are in prime time, it's usually Tuesday or Thursday. Understandably, you won't want to put it on Monday or Wednesday. Maybe it's I don't have the details in front of me, but maybe it would be Tuesday before NXT was on Tuesday.
The little things.
Not Saturday though. That is unusual. Is it really intentional? Is it really intentional? I don't know. I honestly don't know. It might be, it might not be. But it's an interesting coincidence. And look, this it's not like that's going to do a big number. I'm sure it's going to do a minute number. We might not even see it in the results because it'll do such a
we Impact rating 111,000 on Thursday with a .03 and 18 to 49 compared to 110,000 the week before with a .03. So really not much of a difference at all when it comes to the viewing of Impact. And this would have been a week after Don Callis was fired as executive.
Yeah, I would call this the weakest, easily the weakest rating of the programs this week. This was the lowest of the year in 18 to 49, I think. This was tied with 2 weeks ago in total audience. There's been a trend throughout the last 12 months of Impact. Its total audience diminishing, but its 18 to 49 audience increasing, which it is still increased well above. So this is the end of June for Impact. They're doing well above where they were last year in 18 to 49, even though their total viewership is down. So, I don't have like median viewer age going back to a year ago, but I got to think the median viewer is younger. You get, when I post the ratings, you get a lot of Twitter responses for people who probably want to be mad at AEW and tell you that this AEW relationship isn't working out because they see that the total number is down. But if I'm Access, I see that the total number is down a little bit, but it's a younger audience and it's a higher 18 to 49. What would you rather have? I don't know. You'd have to ask them what they care about, what they prioritize. But if you're selling ads, you would rather have a demo rather than total viewership.
Yeah,
this is a property that they own anyway, so they're not.
That's the thing. Anthem at the end of the day owns Access, so it's like maybe they would shuffle around to a different night, but I don't think they would. I think they're just gonna go with Thursdays. It is interesting though that now the dark. There's no
other night to put them on. You can't do Monday, you can't do Tuesday, you can't do Wednesday, you can't do Friday. You could do Saturday, but that's worse than Thursday, and same for Sunday.
But what's interesting too is this is the first Impact in a long time where there's no Dark Side of the Ring and no China special. So none of that audience came over.
Right. Yes. This was the lowest 18 to 49 audience since December 29th. But again, still quite a bit higher. Let's see, I can pull up the number right here from the Wrestlenomics viewership spread sheet, which you can get access to through Patreon. 18 to 49, I'm taking medians here, so this would account for any really high exceptional numbers. Not that Impact necessarily has any, but up 50% year over year in June in 18 to 49, down 15% in total audience.
Now,
the only program, by the way, sorry to cut you off, the only program so far in June that is up year over year is Impact in 18 to 49. Maybe AEW would, but in these preemption comparisons, of course it's not.
Now, we thought that Most Wanted Treasures was done, and they had one episode left that was this past Sunday, and it was...
No, we knew that. We knew that it was Ric Flair.
Okay, I just didn't see a rating here, so I wasn't sure if you pulled that or not. That was a 2-hour special for the...
I did not put that in our run sheet,
yes.
but I will find that. Let's see here. I deprived it from the Gullo report.
Which was very, very interesting episode.
Most Wanted Treasures on June 20th did 491,000 viewers, 211 in the demo. That is, by comparison, almost exactly the same as last week in total, slightly down from in 1849, down 13% from last week. The last week was 490. This week 400.
And against one of their pay-per-views, so.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, any final thoughts on viewership before we move to live events?
No, I guess we're getting into the final days of the pandemic era of TV. So ratings should be up in July, month to month for everybody. If live crowds matter as much as some stock analysts think so. Stock analysts are definitely optimistic about the effect that WWE is going to have when they return to touring as far as the ratings. It's been a very interesting last 15 months for viewership, where we saw in the very first week, I think there was a curiosity factor that increased ratings. The very first week of the pandemic, where they're gonna do SmackDown in front of no people, and the rating was up a little bit. But after that, ratings fell tremendously throughout April and May, because then I think we're in a period where people are feeling that, all right, this is a temporary thing. This wrestling here with no fans doesn't count, and I'll come back to it later. And that never ended. WWE saved a lot of money by not having to tour and by doing it all in the Performance Center, but their ratings continued to crash through July until finally Vince McMahon invented the Thunderdome, along with his business partners, the Famous Group, and others, and that coincided with ratings improving. So it's I don't know. It's been more expensive for WWE to do it that way. Meanwhile, AEW has consolidated tapings. About every other Dynamite has been taped here, and they've saved money that way. We're probably at the end of that time too. Although, as we'll talk about, AEW's already planning on going back to Daly's place in August. Have you seen that? Did you see that? I did not see this before this morning. Yeah,
well, it was they announced it last night.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, when they were doing the live Saturday Dynamite. So yeah, that was pulling up on my Twitter feed last night that they were coming back, and yeah, I mean, so we can talk that right there. Yeah, so Daly's place, they're coming back. I mean, maybe they're still trying to gauge what markets they should hit, and that this is like a buffer for them, like.
It might just be a timing thing of not being able to find a venue on short notice by the time they decided that they were going to go back to touring. I don't know.
But yeah, and another big news that was this week was that WWE is coming back to the Madison Square Garden, and that's going to be Friday, September 10th for a SmackDown, which is interesting because AEW will be in that New York, New Jersey area on September 5th in Newark, and then September 22nd in Queens at the Arthur Ashe USTA Stadium. So, wow, there's going to be a lot of wrestling in that area come September, and how much of the market share is going to be split just with AEW alone running Newark and then Queens within a matter of a few weeks.
Yeah, and a lot of the tickets for Newark are already sold because this is a rescheduled pre-pandemic event. But who knows what the configuration will be. I'm sure we'll be watching the seating map closely when it comes out for Arthur Ashe Stadium. I don't know off the top of my head what the capacity is, but they could put probably well over 10, maybe 20,000 people in there if they wanted to. I don't think they're going to draw that much, but they might. They'll probably draw multiple thousands. I mean, they'll probably draw up over 5,000. I think if they don't draw over 5,000, I think it would be a disappointment. Maybe 7,000, under 7,000 might be a disappointment.
It's definitely built for wrestling. The way it's around. The capacity is 23,771.
23,000. Okay.
So,
wow. But remember, in wrestling, you have to put a massive stage in there that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to put up.
Yeah.
So it'll be maybe 2/3 of that.
All right. So any thoughts on the WWE going to the Garden? Is that post wrestling confirmed when it was via PW Insider?
Not really. I mean, it's Andrew Zarian from Matt Men Podcast said that he doesn't think that it was a response to Arthur Ashe Stadium. So maybe it's not. It's not certainly not unfathomable that WWE would want to go back to Madison Square Garden soon. But they are doing it for a Raw, for a TV taping, which is something that they always try to avoid doing. But granted, this is a different situation where you're finally back on the road. Maybe you can see the sentimental thought that Vince might want to have about getting back on tour and going back to MSG for a Raw rather than a house show.
And I think too, they just kind of.
So,
I think they would announce it sooner if they knew how New York State was going to be with restrictions. I think the Garden was probably always on their list. They got to come back and do the Garden when we get in front of fans.
I'd have to look it up. I think this was a case of something being canceled for Madison Square Garden, and the date became available.
So maybe they were trying to get sooner. All right. So also they're going to Boston. Real quick on the Garden. PW Insider notes they would also run MSG on December 26th, which makes sense. It's the Christmas holiday tour. It's tradition. WWE is also announced that they're going to Boston via PW Insider Monday, September 13th, Raw at the TD Garden. And then AEW though will also be in Boston September 8th for Dynamite at the Agnes Arena. So this is interesting.
Yeah, that's only 5 days apart. AEW has the first shot though, but this is still a far cry from Wrestle War '89 when WWF at the time ran the Nashville whatever, and they would try to run like a really long show to wear everybody out so they won't want to go to the show the next day.
And then the Clash of the Champions pay-per-view in Columbus, Ohio is going to be September 26th. It's also via the PW Insider. So yeah, I mean, this looks to be a normal. Now they're just going for normal markets. I don't think because most states seem to have really loosened their restrictions. I know Ohio was one of the first states to get everybody vaccinated.
Yeah, and they're already doing
not everybody, but all age groups.
Yeah, and then they're already doing. I think it's a Raw in Cleveland coming up.
All right, and then this is the news that surprised me the most when it came to live events. Was WWE has announced a 4-city tour in the United Kingdom. They're going to be in Newcastle at the Utilitia Arena. That's going to be Sunday, September 19th. And then they're going to be in London at the O2, and that's going to be on
Monday,
September 20th.
O2 nearly sold out already.
It's crazy. Cardiff Motorport Arena, Tuesday, September 21st. And then the last of the tour will be in Glasgow at the SSE Hydro. That's going to be Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. And it's the SmackDown roster that's being advertised. In the ad, they said fans attending WWE Live will see their favorite WWE superstars from SmackDown, including Roman Reigns, Bianca Belair, Big E, Sasha Banks, Bayley, the Usos, and more. I haven't paid attention to how it was in England because I haven't seen a lot of independent wrestling in England. So I was kind of shocked to see this. I was like, oh, okay, wrestling's back in England. Because I know Europe, when we were getting people vaccinated here, Europe was kind of sliding again like Japan was. So I was very shocked.
We'll see. When we talk about a study that I did the last couple of days, there aren't that many match records in cage match for the UK. But the O2, which is a Monday, which is a Raw, there's very few tickets left for that already. Interesting thought. Are people going to be, I wonder what the requirements are for getting people into the country. This is a couple months away, but by September, do you have to be vaccinated to get into the UK? Read the names who are advertised for this.
Roman Reigns, Bianca Belair, Big E, Sasha Banks, Bayley, the Usos, and more.
So hopefully they're all vaccinated.
Should be interesting. Side note, Australia is doing another lockdown, so we're not going to see touring in there anytime soon.
Yes, it's funny like how I'm sure their case rates and their death rates are far lower than they were, or maybe even currently for the U.S. Yet Japan and Australia being very restrictive and careful. I wanted to go over a few highlights in the ongoing ticket sales that are happening here as the return to live events is only about 2 weeks away. The first event back on the road for either AEW or WWE will be July 7th in Miami. There is a really great wrestling Patreon that I'm going to rely on for some of this information here called Wrestling Ticks with an X. That is on Patreon, just $2. You can get access to this Patreon where the person running it is using a script that is counting the dots in the Ticketmaster seating maps. So we know we've got pretty accurate counts here. And he's being careful, too, about making sure that we don't know necessarily that because the ticket is unavailable that it's sold, right? You have tickets on the seating map that are way up in the 300s in the upper level. Those seats may have never been put on sale. But he's trying to get an idea of what tickets were on sale in the first place, trying to surmise what's happening here. And so we have some pretty good counts or good estimates of how many tickets are at least distributed, most of them being sold among those that are distributed. But anyway, Miami, July 7th, the first event back on the road for AEW. It looks like 2,700 tickets have been distributed as of Saturday. There's only 440 available on the seating map right now, after they pulled 1,500 out of the upper level that are no longer available. I don't think because they were sold, because they were just taken off of the market for now. Maybe because it doesn't look that great with all those blue dots up there that maybe aren't selling that well anyway. Which is interesting. Now it's Miami. It's not that. What's the distance? What's the driving distance from Jacksonville to Miami?
Oh, it's quite some bit. Jacksonville's at the top of the state, and Miami's at the bottom, so
it's a 5-hour drive. So that's not the same market.
I would have expected it to be a little longer.
So it's not the same market. That's a pretty long drive. So it's not as if this has been an exhausted market because it's so close to Jacksonville. But their first event outside of Daly's Place, 2,700. That's on the low end for what Dynamite was doing pre-pandemic. And then you got the following week, July 14th, just outside of Austin in Cedar Park, Texas. Only a few dozen tickets remaining, so that's getting close to being sold out. The following week, the third Dynamite on the road in Garland, Texas, just outside of Dallas. Over 4,000 tickets appear to be distributed. About 1,000 are left. Wrestling Tix estimates that the gate currently, among the tickets that appear to be out right now, around $244,000 in ticket sales. So, in terms of live event money, not yet covering the cost of I know this is not like it's an incredibly high gate for them. It's probably normal when you're talking about 4,000 tickets sold. So just to give you an idea of how expensive it is to put on one of these TV tapings, it's somewhere around $500,000 to put on a Dynamite, a live Dynamite. So that's the ticket sales are covering here half of it. So you have to have media revenue to put on the type of events that you see on your TV today. July 28th in Charlotte, over 3,900 sold, according to what AEW told WrestleTix. So nearly 4,000, maybe at this point more than 4,000 in Charlotte for the fourth Dynamite on the road, before they go back to Daly's Place for the fifth Dynamite on the road. The first WWE event back on the road is in Houston for a SmackDown, July 16th. So that is how many days? That is 9 days after AEW is already on the road. Looks like the low hundreds are remaining for Houston for the SmackDown for the first one back on the road for WWE. And then on the Sunday following that, Money in the Bank, only a few dozen tickets remain for the first house show for WWE, which is in Pittsburgh. It looks like over 5,200 tickets are distributed. This is as of Thursday by WrestleTix count. So that's pretty good. Maybe we weren't being fair earlier when we were being so disparaging about how slow ticket sales were going. It looks like ticket sales are fleshing out here. The first house show doing 5,200. That's not nearly a sellout, but for a house show, think about what house shows were doing pre-pandemic. They were doing, and now this is a market like Pittsburgh, so it's not a small market. But
what is the date of the WWE?
The low thousands, I would think.
Sorry. I was going to ask you, what is the date of the WWE show in Pittsburgh?
July 24th.
All right. And then August 11th and 13th is the Dynamites and the Rampage that are going to be in Pittsburgh. So just like a New York, New Jersey situation there. So it's very interesting. 2 nights in the same arena for AEW in the same city. It's going to be interesting to see how that draws.
Yeah. And those tickets are already on sale. I don't have notes on those prepared, but those are on the WrestleTix Patreon also for the Rampage and Dynamite tapings in Pittsburgh. August 2nd, Chicago, Raw, over 7,700 tickets out for Chicago. That's as of Wednesday, so that's doing pretty well. Not a sellout yet, but that's doing pretty well. San Antonio for Raw on August 16th, 4,400, in excess of that number as of Tuesday. And SummerSlam in Nick Khan's hometown, Las Vegas. The capacity appears to be 38,766, so just under 39,000. And they appear to have sold, including resales, 36,000 tickets. 36,000 tickets out. Maybe I'm sure, not all of them. I'm sure there's some comps in there, but over 36,000 tickets appear to be out, including over 3,000 resales as of Tuesday. So SummerSlam doing really well, and those are my live event highlights for the week.
All right, and we talked social media last week on the show, and we really didn't get into a lot of TikTok. And what we have this week to kind of tell you the scope of an influence that these wrestling promotions have in TikTok, starting with WWE, where they have 11.5 million followers on their TikTok with 181 million likes. And you compare that to AEW, where they have 212,000 followers on their TikTok with 1.3 million likes. So WWE looks to continue to be the juggernaut in this. New Japan Pro Wrestling, 15, little under 16,000 followers with 22,000 likes. Ring of Honor, 6,760 followers with 25,000 likes. CMLL with 12.8 followers and 47.8 likes. And then might be the most impressive of the non-WWE 193.8 thousand followers for AAA with a 708,000 likes. So WWE continuing to be the juggernaut.
Were you going to do the Spanish? Were you going to do the Spanish pronunciation?
Yeah, AAA.
AAA. Okay. So I'm trying to look here to give this a comparison. I'm going to look mainly at TikTok for the comparison between WWE and AEW. On Twitter, get an idea of the proportionality here. On Twitter, AEW right now, the main AEW account has 620, let's call it 9,000 followers, and WWE has 11.4 million. So they have more. WWE has more TikTok followers than they do Twitter followers by a very small margin, by 100,000. And but AEW has roughly 3 times as many Twitter followers as they do TikTok followers. What that tells me, AEW way behind the game on TikTok. When I tweeted this earlier in the week, AEW had not published any TikToks since March of this year. They have since posted many, so they have responded. Whether or not that's a coincidence, whether or not SmackDown being on FS1 is a coincidence, who knows?
If I'm a wrestling company, I am getting on the TikTok train and I'm not letting go. This thing is a juggernaut. It's made 19-year-old kids millionaires.
It's the only. I believe it's the only thing that's taking up. It's the only single platform that's taking up more watch time. YouTube is the only platform besides TikTok that is taking up that much watch time. So it's YouTube and then it's TikTok.
It's because you're getting content that's 30 seconds or less. Boom, and then on to the next one, and on to the next one, and on to the next one.
Do you have TikTok? I don't even have TikTok.
I don't have a TikTok account, but I install and I'll go through and I'll watch. Mostly, I like to watch funny cat videos. Cat TikToks are my jam. But yeah. So it's just boom, quick. A lot of content there. And if I'm a wrestling company, I want to get in there. I know, from a local level, Umpire State Wrestling, they put a TikTok of Roscoe Black tossing a referee into the corner from the February 2020 show, and that's done actually pretty well. Metric wise. So,
are you in charge of the ESW
I am not.
TikTok? You're not. So you're breaking the tradition of the other co-host, of the newer co-host of Wrestlenomics, in charge of the ESW social media.
I am not. No.
Yes.
All right.
So yeah, it's the important thing to remember here. We talked about Facebook last week and everybody's response to people responding to my tweets about the Facebook video views being so short, being so low for AEW relative to even Impact, was that, well, there's just old people on Facebook and Facebook, whatever. Facebook sucks, and it does, whatever, right? TikTok, though, certainly a younger audience here. And if you're trying to have a really popular wrestling brand that has lots of young viewers who are going to turn into loyal viewers as they get older, then you would want to invest heavily in TikTok. Impact, by the way, I should mention, Impact, no TikTok. Ring of Honor, not verified, less than 7,000 followers. Impact, not even on TikTok.
Get a TikTok, Impact. Get a TikTok.
Go ahead.
Moving on, last week we talked about the Tony Khan interview with Forbes and the big thing about the video game investment. Well, there's comments from a PWI Insider interview about the video game investment from Tony, and this is what he had to say about it. He goes, "While a lot of people were pulling out and cutting back and not investing during the pandemic, I made an investment in people and also, frankly, a huge investment in video games. I'm an investor in the gaming space, and I think I've been a savvy investor. I've made a large investment with my family that I pushed my family to make, and kind of along with AEW, I would describe it the two investments where I've kind of dragged my dad across the goal line a little bit. We've put $20 million into Epic Games, which looks pretty smart now because it's worth a lot more than that now. So gaming is something we know a lot about, and I happen to work very closely with a gaming expert by the name of Kenny Omega, who's put together some great ideas and is doing a great job, along with Nick Sobik, who is AEW Senior Vice President of Business Operations, Gaming and Esports, and a lot of other great people I work with." So, there's his comments.
Experienced corporate executive Kenny Omega is on the team. Have no fear. Don't you love it when Tony Khan speaks about AEW in the first person? That's one of my favorite things. AEW is one person, but that works with a lot of people, though. I've been told that the AEW game. So let's clear up confusion here. This interview was a little bit ambiguous. I asked some questions, and so AEW is not investing $20 million in Epic Games, which is the maker of Fortnite, which I understand is popular. That's a Khan family investment. I don't know maybe if there's an LLC involved in that, but that is separate and earlier than whatever AEW did. AEW has invested, as Tony Khan said, in the Forbes article, or at least it was published in the Forbes article. I don't think it's a direct quote. A 8-figure investment in gaming. I believe the biggest piece of that is the console, is what they've invested into their console game.
Yeah.
For good reason. I think console games, and perhaps mobile games as well, but console game is the one that's going to be the most popular, certainly at this moment in time. And it's a great marketing tool. Not only is it a product that could sell well, but it's a great marketing tool. In terms of creating fans. I've been told that maybe the investment that they're making is also around $20 million. So that's a lot of money to invest. If you're a wrestling company that's probably only generating well under $100 million a year, I estimated last year somewhere in the 60s. It's in that article on Wrestlenomics.com that went out last week. Somewhere in the $60 million range of revenue for 2020. They'll generate more this year because they'll have an escalated TV payments, and they'll have ticket revenue that'll contribute to their revenues. So 20 to maybe 70, 80 million dollars to be generous. So that's a big percentage of your annual revenue. Nonetheless, Tony Khan believes that the wrestling, I think what Tony Khan says, that the wrestling portion of the business is profitable as it is. If it was not for this investment, they would be profitable. I think AEW should stop talking about profit and invent their own non-GAAP measure, just as WWE has, adjusted OIBDA. In terms of adjusted OIBDA, where we exclude things that we feel like excluding, we are even more profitable than we would be otherwise. This is a hilarious joke and you're not laughing. So that's your problem.
All right. Well, moving on. WWE made some releases on Friday, quite a bit actually. Those releases included Arya Daivari, Tony Nese, Fandango, Tyler Breeze, the Tag Team Ever Rise, August Gray, the Singh Brothers, Arturo Rios, Marina Shafir, Kurt Stallion, Killian Dane, Tino Sabatelli, and Kenise Mobley, the writer that was on a podcast last week that said she was hired, even though she knew absolutely nothing about professional wrestling. And with that, you actually did a cage match count, Brandon, of now with all those cuts and the cuts we have been getting, the active wrestlers. Now this active rosters included some members of the broadcast team, some managers, etc. But WWE still 309 talents on contract compared to AEW 124, CML 120, Impact 69, New Japan 67, Ring of Honor 57, Dragon Gate 38, MLW 28, and Stardom 27. And that AEW number is probably a lot of the AEW Dark talents that like aren't contracted members. Or is that just
maybe. I mean, who knows what the criteria is that causes Cage Match to assign somebody to a promotion.
Yeah. So
So this is it just gives you a rough idea, I would call it.
So even all these releases, they're still, by and far, they have the most talent, number-wise.
Yes. I would like to do a study in the future that looks at, let's I don't know, let's pick a chunk of time like a month and say, over a month, WB, and it's easier now because they're not using any extras or whatever, but in a month, let's say there's, how many wrestlers, I think I kind of did this when the releases happened earlier. How many wrestlers did they use in a given month? How many wrestlers did they have in their contract? What percentage of their wrestlers are they actually using? But, when I did this in the past, it was like a third, for a week, for a given week. But it's understandable that you wouldn't use a wrestler on one week and then use that wrestler on another week. But, this is the third, this was all NXT and 205 Live, right? So a few things to talk about here. I think 3 things to talk about here. One is Nick Khan. Another is 205 Live. So it's 205 Live going away is one thing, because they just dropped a bunch of people from who were wrestling on 205 Live. That show has been around for like 5 years. I would guess that it's done, or it's not long for however long, how much longer it's going to be around. I was thinking that maybe, when I'd heard late last year that an NXT Evolve program was going to come out. Apparently they did some tapings for this thing. Sean Ross Sapp has reported. Those tapings have never seen the light of day. Now here we are in late June. So I wonder, is Gabe Sapolsky long for this company? He has a role as a writer, right? With NXT. What's going on with that?
A lot of Evolve talents have been part of these cuts the last 2 times.
Yeah, we've got, among the people who I would associate with Evolve, Kurt Stallion, August Gray, the former Anthony Green, was working Evolve towards the end. There are Arturo Rujas, an Evolve person. Tony Nese was 205 Live, but he was associated with Evolve prior to that.
And the releases before, you had Brandy Lauren, who was Evolve as well. So, and I'm sure there's a couple of others I'm forgetting. So,
yes, people are shouting at the podcast right now. So there's that. Is something going to replace 205 Live? And what would it be?
I don't know if they're going to go full blown with that NXT India show, that they, kind of teased when they did that spectacular, wherever it was. That could possibly be it. Or do they just debuted Anthony Henry as Asher Hale, and they also put Alexander as Artie Sterling. So, they just debuted on 205 Live, and they were look to get the push, and maybe they just do whatever cruiserweights they have now, and just keep the train rolling. So
Sean Ross Sapp reported, and I don't have it in front of me, but Sean Ross Sapp reported that Nick Khan was making the call about these cuts. So that's not terribly specific. And again, I don't have the text of what Sean Ross Sapp reported in front of me, but there's much consternation in the Voices of Wrestling Slack about whether or not Vince, whether or not it's proper to credit or blame Nick Khan for these cuts. What I would speculate is happening is there's decisions being made, even including with input from Christina Salen, about whether or not you really need to have as much talent under contract as they have. Think about maybe even from Nick Khan's perspective, he wanted to come in there and set up this talent management group that would monetize their talent, get everybody off of Twitch and Cameo, and basically treat their talent, treat parts of their employee base like talent agents that would monetize their talent. I think they found out that maybe not all of their talent was really that easy to monetize. Some are, but many not. And those on the low end, like those who were cut this past week, definitely on the low end. So what's the point of having this huge base of talent that we can't really monetize, and it's a cost against us when we could cut these costs and become more profitable? It's something like that happening, certainly with Vince's approval. All
right. So moving on to some former WWE executives from Bloomberg, Barrios and Wilson, SBAC may acquire Bolero. Bolero Corp, a operator of bowling centers at
SPAC is the proper pronunciation.
Bolero Corp, operator of bowling centers that sometimes include full service bar and arcade games, is in talks to go public through a merger with a blank check from Isos Acquisition Corp, according to people with knowledge in the matter. Isos is in discussions to raise new equity to support a transaction that set the value of the combined entity at about $2.6 billion, said the people. Terms aren't finalized, and it's possible talks could collapse. ISO shares surge as much as 4.2% after Bloomberg News reported the talks. Bolero, led by Chief Executive Officer Tom Shannon, operates centers under its own name, as well as the AMF and Bolmero Lane brands. The New York-based company has more than 12,000 lanes at more than 300 venues that are visited by more than 28 million customers annually, according to its website. And
so there's George Barrios and Michelle Wilson getting into new business, bowling.
Yeah, and if you look at the ISO stock value right now, around $9.86 as of close on Friday.
Are you going to buy ISO's shares? That's a pretty low. That's a pretty good deal. That's not. It's no Google. It's no Amazon where they want hundreds of dollars for one share. You can get a George Barrios, Michelle Wilson SPAC share for under $10 as of the close of the market.
I mean, may not be the worst value. I mean,
their company, by the way, go ahead. Their company, by the way, is valued at the market cap of $314 million. No idea how they come to that, but there you go. I don't have much to say about it. Just people loved hearing this news on Twitter that Barrios and Wilson might be getting into the bowling business.
All right, and then you did something interesting. A wonderful Wrestlenomics chart on who are the world's most prolific wrestlers. How did you break this down? And some of these names are very interesting. How did you break this down to find out the most prolific wrestlers?
I'm glad you asked. I want you to guess here. Some of the patrons who have read this post as you crack your knees have already may know the answer because it's in the post. I've deprived you of this information to save it for this moment. So I've done this going back to, this is 2021 as of June 20th, but going all the way back to 2015. I'm working on 14, but having issues with the code. But anyway, I use Python to scrape cagematch. So this is cagematch data, not complete. Cagematch data is not a complete record. I know, we got indie wrestlers screaming at me right now because cagematch doesn't have some obscure indie show that you worked. But it's a pretty good database. Certainly the companies that are on the more high-profile end, all the televised companies are in here. Most of the higher level indies are close to complete, if not complete. So going back to 2015, I had to scrape every single match result. Had to do this across a number of columns. How many data points would you guess, Chris Gullo, were scraped in order to produce this report, which, by the way, is available to $5 patrons at patreon.com/Wrestlenomics?
Let's go 50,000. No, that's too high.
50,000.
Let's go 20,000.
Guess again. Higher.
Higher. Okay. 35,000?
Higher.
45,000.
A little higher.
1 million data points.
Just over 1 million. Just over 1 million data points. Yes. This took, I'm doing sort of what I would say is our sort of wide scale scrapes of cage matches. Match results database. I had to scrape the wrestler database too to put the names to the numbers. So well over 1 million data points for this. It took me, I don't know, a couple days to write the script. If I was a better programmer, smarter programmer, more experienced with this stuff, I'm just kind of starting out. It might not have taken me so long, but and then it took many hours over a few days to passively just run the program and scrape it. So this is what we have. We have a report that shows who's had the most, and this is interactive. This is a Google Data Studio product where you can, if you, there's a PDF version for patrons, but there's also the Google Data Studio. If you click on any of the headings, you can sort it by that. It shows you who had the most matches, and you can scroll through. In the case of 2021, the 4,743 wrestlers who have had matches in 2021 on the cage match record, well below prior years. Let's take the non-COVID year of 2019, where there were about 10,000 wrestlers with records, only under 5,000 so far this year. Yeah, you can sort this by most matches, by most promotions wrestled for. So that was really interesting to me, probably as an indie wrestler, to ask the question, who's wrestling for the greatest variety of companies? And that's how by default it is sorted. We've got this broken down not just on a worldwide basis, but also among the major countries where there is wrestling, including I did a region that is the US and Canada, a region that is the UK and Ireland, Japan, Mexico, and then other countries, which primarily includes Australia. So one interesting thing. Have you ever heard of Jackson Spade?
Jackson Spade? No.
If the cage match data is to be believed, granted, cage match is not a complete record of every match that's ever happened, but if the cage match data is to be believed, Nobody in the last half decade has had as many matches as one Jackson Spade, an Australian wrestler apparently, whose record, if you try to look at it on Cagematch, if you try to look at his wrestler profile, it says, sorry, this page has been taken down at the request of the worker. So, who knows why? But yeah, he's, if you go, if you look at 2015, 16, 17, 18, he's among the wrestlers who's had the most matches. And this is even, we're talking about years where there's W house shows happening.
And I'm familiar with Australian talent, and I don't think I've ever heard of him.
I don't know. But yeah, if you sort a year like 2017, the people who have had the most matches recorded in the database, number 1 is Jackson Spade in 2017 with 287 matches. Number 2, again, he's got 287. Number 2 is Isami Kodaka with 193. So nearly 100 matches more than the number 2 guy. It's been suggested to me that, like, maybe it's referring to 2 wrestlers here. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I will point out that the cage match profile uses a unique ID. Obviously, wrestlers used a variety of names, even in a given year, maybe a given week. A single wrestler, one human being, can use multiple names to have different matches, right? The cage match profile, it takes a number and assigns it to one human being. That's the intent anyway. I'm sure it's not perfect, but that's the intent. I don't know if there's other Jackson Spades that don't appear to be not with another cage match profile number though. So let's just talk about 2021. Go ahead.
Just looking it up, like every Jackson Spade link is the same picture of the same guy. So looking at social medias and profiles and all that.
Do a little Google search. It's not like you get obvious. There is a J Spade, J period Spade, but that person has his own cage match profile.
Yeah. He looks like a deathmatch wrestler. I'm not sure. I can't 100% tell, but from the few pictures I saw. Yeah. So
I've been meaning I need to get in touch with the people at Cage Match and find out if they'll talk to me about what the story is there. But anyway, the most prolific wrestlers. Do you want to just
so just to kind of and remind you what we're taking here is matches and promotions, the amount of numbers. So of course, independent wrestlers are going to dominate this. Worldwide, Quadric, number 1 with 20 promotions and 37 worldwide matches, all in the USA and Canada. Manders.
Are you familiar with him? That was not a name that I was familiar with.
Oh yeah, no, so what the trend here too is people like Cole Radrick and other people on this list, Manders and a few others that I'm going to mention, had a lot of matches WrestleMania weekend. And that obviously will really add to the numbers if you're wrestling 7, 8, 9 times in a weekend. So, right under him, Paul Manders, 19 worldwide promotions to 34 matches, all the US and Canada. Erez, who actually just, announced for MLW, but he wrestled for 18 worldwide promotions with 35 worldwide matches, 17 US, Canada, and 18 in Mexico. Billy Starks, 18 worldwide promotions, 35 worldwide matches, all in USA and Canada. And we'll just go to the number 5, Masha Slamovich, 17 worldwide promotions, 34 worldwide matches, 29 US and Canada, and 5 in Japan. And just to kind of round out, we'll go over all numbers. Lee Moriarty, 6, Nolan Edwards, 7, Rob Killjoy, 8, Laredo Kid, 9, Gary J, 10, Matt Makowski, 11 on the worldwide side of things.
Yeah, I think this is probably useful for talent scouting. If you're a major company, you should probably be a patron to Wrestlenomics. I think if you go back in the years before this, you'll see who's on the top of these lists. So people who are now signed by major companies. So it's probably a good forecast of that, or a good forecast of who's getting a lot of experience, who's being valued enough by a variety of promoters to be booked in many, many places, and who's probably traveling a great deal.
And if you just look at UK Ireland, which didn't have a lot of matches, so topping that list is Dan Maloney with 3 promotions and 6 matches. If you look in Japan, which was pretty full steam until recently, we have Kengo Mishima, 14 Japan promotions with 49 matches, but right under him, Shingehiro Irie, 14 promotions but 100 Japan matches. So I can't believe Irie was able to wrestle 100 matches with there being like another lockdown again in Japan.
Yeah. I've told the
and then Mexico.
Yeah, I'm told that the numbers for Mexico are greatly determined by this Colega Pro that runs daily in Mexico. Have you heard of this?
I've not, but if they're running daily, that makes a lot of sense. The number one name is interesting. It's Jesse Ventura, Jesse with a Y.
Yes.
11 Mexico promotions with 29 matches. Right behind Jesse was Toxin with 10 promotions and 27 matches, and Latigo with 10 promotions and 23 matches. And then just in your other category, Robbie Eagles topped that list with 10 promotions and 19 matches.
So he's an Australian wrestler. I was looking at this to see. I did a pivot table to look at in what countries have the most events, to sort of look at, like, should I create a separate Australia category? Well, Australia is doing like half of the number of events that the next up the slot is the next country, which might be UK maybe. So if it's the UK, let's say the UK is doing twice as many events as Australia. So I didn't see a justification in making a separate section for Australia, even though Australia is definitely the biggest piece of this other countries segment. Followed by countries like Chile. There's quite a bit of wrestling there. But yeah. Any other thoughts on this most prolific wrestlers?
No, and Brandon, I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's like a website, but he also on social media, WrestleMap. I happen to know the guy that runs it. He's put a lot of data on there as far as all the promotions running in the world, and he tries to get results and all that. So yeah, check out WrestleMap. Give him a shout out. I know he's been featured on the Business on Business podcast. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, the Bobby's podcast. Yes. You know who has 0 matches on this 2021 list?
Oh, Brandon Thurston.
Yes. On the Voice of Wrestling flagship podcast, towards the end, if you actually listen to all 3 hours of it, for the handful of people who do, I was called out. I was shamed for not getting back into the ring. Close the laptop. Get your nose out of the spreadsheets, I was told. I will let you know. Immediately after listening to this, I did text a promoter and say, I'm ready if you need. So
I hope to share a ring with you and announce you someday soon again, Brandon.
We'll see.
You know, it's that chemistry thing. My highlight reel, I have me announcing you. It's chemistry.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I have taken some bumps again this week. It's terrible. Can't say I enjoyed it, but I am. I'm doing more. We'll continue to do more again this week and in the lifetime to come.
Any final thoughts as we wrap up and give the plugs for the week?
Not really. Nothing that comes to mind. I'm continuing to. My long-term thought here is to. I didn't decide to talk about this, but sure, we can talk about this. So we've been doing the Patreon since October of 2020, and that maybe by the 1 year mark of having restarted it, I might want to do an additional tier that will involve a lot of information, a lot of reports, kind of like this most prolific wrestlers report, but things that would be recurring, including reports on viewership. Obviously, people already have access on the $5 tier, which is the only tier currently, to the massive data set viewership spreadsheet. But to do more things that are powered by scripting, by writing programs like the ones that I've written for this one using Python that would pull the data and then that would put them into something like a Google Data Studio report. That's what I'm thinking for maybe another tier sometime in the future. I'm doing another Net Promoter Score study.
All right, yes. I mean, and stuff like that and so much more, including the daily viewership spreadsheet that's updated 5 days a week, the Wrestlenomics Patreon. Only $5 a month. It is a great deal. You're just in flux with data. And like you said, putting stuff up like the prolific wrestlers, that's great for scouts. For promotions like who are the hot indie talents that I need to book on my show? Boom. That just shows you right there who's getting around there.
And we know indie promoters have a lot of money. They love to spend. So, you got $5. And in fact, Chris Cole loves to plug this because if we finish with over 125 subs this month into the next month, people's credit cards, their credit card info gets expired a lot, so we might lose some. Usually we lose some that way. But if we end up with over 125, which we currently do have over 125, Chris Gullo gets a small raise.
Come on, subscribe to that Patreon. Just plugs from me. Of course, you can check out Chris Gullo on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. My other podcast, Rediscovering Indies, this Wednesday, Part 4, XPW. Not as long as a listen as the other ones before, so it's a pretty quick listen, a little over 90 minutes. But we talk about a little bit about the trial, the legacy of XPW, and could XPW possibly come back? So look for that on RTI Pod on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, Rediscovering the Indies.
It's a question that every wrestling fan has gone to bed at night thinking.
It's more realistic than you think. So just check us out there. And what do you got to plug, Brandon, before we close this rodeo?
We have articles every week on Wrestlenomics.com, expanding on thoughts talked about here on Wrestlenomics Radio. You can follow Wrestlenomics on Twitter at Wrestlenomics. We do not have a TikTok either, and if we want to break into that younger demo, somebody better, I don't even want to say this out loud, but somebody better occupy the Wrestlenomics handle if they haven't already. Jesus. I'm going to have to do that before I publish the podcast now. You follow me on Twitter at Brandon Thurston. I'm Brandon Thurston.
I'm Chris Gullo.
And we'll talk to everybody next time. Bye.